can't control geopolitics, and ultimately neither can you. But we can protect our biological stability and regulate our system. Welcome to Longevity to Go. I start every episode with the same question. What does true longevity mean? And maybe today you'd answer staying healthy, building resilience, living long. But I want to expand on that question today. What does true longevity mean now in a world that doesn't feel calm, where you can't control global instability? Maybe then it doesn't mean length. Maybe true longevity isn't the absence of stress or strength, but the ability to bounce back, regulability. And that's exactly what today's about. In recent days, we've talked about how persistent instability affects our biology, from cortisol to telomeres to heart rate variability. Today, we're connecting the dots. And I'll tell you honestly, I notice it myself. On days when I open the news in the morning, still in bed, before I've even taken a breath, my body feels different. Not politically, but physiologically. This episode isn't a political discussion. It's a physiological one. Because persistent instability, even if you only experience it indirectly, changes how your body regulates itself. Longevity doesn't happen outside of the world. It happens within you. The stress response, evolutionarily useful but limited in time. The human stress response evolved for acute dangers. When a threat appears, the following happens. The hypothalamus is activated, the pituitary gland sends signals, and the adrenal glands release new cortisol. That's adaptive, and ultimately it's also useful. But the so-called HPA axis was designed for short phases of activation. When activation becomes chronic, cortisol rhythms flatten, deep sleep phases decrease, and immune modulation changes. Insulin sensitivity also drops. Chronic stress physiology is associated with increased cardiovascular risk, metabolic dysregulation, and reduced regenerative capacity. The stress response is evolutionarily useful, but it was never intended for constant bombardment. I know this from my own experience. When I make several intense decisions in a row, answering emails on the fly, quickly reading a headline and then going straight into the next meeting, I notice my body is revved up. And it stays revved up. That's not a weakness. That's HPA activation. So the problem isn't stress. The problem is permanent activation without oscillation. But longevity needs oscillation. Specifically, this means your body goes up and comes back down. Activation, recovery. Activation, recovery. Like a pendulum, not permanently up, not permanently down, but in motion. The nervous system has two main states. Activation, the sympathetic, and recovery, the parasympathetic. And oscillation means you can enter a state of stress, but you can also return to a state of calm. Being healthy doesn't mean having no stress. Being healthy is being able to come back. Imagine a heartbeat. It goes up, it goes down. If it only stays high, you have a problem. If it only stays flat, you also have a problem. Life is therefore rhythm, and longevity is the capacity for rhythm. And oscillation is the ability of the autonomic nervous system to switch between sympathetic activation and parasympathetic regulation. Chronic stress exposure reduces this ability to switch. Longevity preserves it. So oscillation means going up and coming back down again. I used to think I was resilient and that I could endure a lot. Today I know that resilience isn't about staying at the top. Resilience is about coming back. Sometimes I notice I'm still at my laptop in the evening, mentally in crisis mode. And then I wonder why my sleep is shallow. That is a lack of oscillation. Uncertainty is metabolically very expensive and you can feel it. Maybe you know the feeling. Objectively, you have no acute stress, but internally a permanent what if is playing out. And that is anticipatory tension, and it costs an enormous amount of energy. Not dramatic, but constant and persisting over time. And constancy is biologically relevant. Uncertainty costs energy. Stress research shows that chronic psychological stress correlates with shortened telomere length and altered inflammatory markers. Telomeres protect chromosomal integrity. Aging is multifactorial, but persistent dysregulation accelerates biological wear and tear. And war represents extreme uncertainty. But even indirect, permanent uncertainty keeps the system in a kind of anticipatory tension. And vigilance consumes energy. Stability protects this energy. And heart rate variability and information overload play an important role here. Heart rate variability, HRV, is a marker for autonomic adaptability. High HRV means good recovery capacity. Lower HRV means persistent sympathetic dominance. Constant exposure to alarming information means shortened recovery windows, increases baseline activation, and weakens parasympathetic regulation. Your nervous system doesn't process headlines, it processes threat signals. And boundaries are not a retreat. They are essential biological hygiene. As an entrepreneur, I know how quickly financial uncertainty feels physical. Not in the head, but in the body. When cash flow, responsibility, team, and decisions come together, your system feels it. Chronic activation reduces strategic foresight, emotional regulation, and long-term clarity. That's why I say health and wealth is not a philosophy, it's physiology. And yes, I had to understand that myself first. Financial insecurity activates similar stress pathways as physical threats. Chronic financial stress correlates with elevated cortisol, increased inflammation, and impaired executive function. And for entrepreneurs and executives, it's vital to reduce this chronic activation. This brings long-term clarity in decisions, boosts strategic thinking, and improves emotional regulation. And if you lead others, your nervous system is even more relevant. Health, wealth, and privacy, AI is not a philosophy, it is physiology. You cannot eliminate global instability, but you can increase your own biological stability. There are 3 principles for this: nervous system regulation, information boundaries, and metabolic stability. Principle number 1, nervous system and regulation. Many people believe resilience is mental strength, but resilience is autonomic flexibility. Your nervous system needs oscillation. Activation, recovery, activation, recovery. Constant activation without downregulation creates increased baseline tension. One tool you can use is the 2-minute downshift rule. After intense input, emails, news, conflict, or financial decisions, do 2 minutes of slow breathing. Exhale for longer than you inhale. Why? A prolonged exhalation increases vagal tone and reduces sympathetic dominance. I use the 2-minute downshift rule myself. After intense conversations, difficult decisions, or after the news. 2 minutes of slow breathing, longer exhalation. It sounds really trivial, but it changes your state. And state is decisive. Tool number 2, structured recovery windows. I used to scroll between tasks. Today, I go outside for 5 minutes. No phone, looking into the distance. It feels small, but my system responds. This isn't biohacking, it's regulation. Try it yourself, instead of scrolling between tasks. Go outside for 5 minutes, no phone. Look into the distance. The brain interprets visual expanse as safety. That is an important aspect. Tool number 3, the evening nervous system shutdown. 60 to 90 minutes before sleep. No stimulating inputs. Why? The cortisol rhythm must drop in the evening so deep sleep architecture can develop. Let's move to principle 2, information boundaries. Your system cannot distinguish proximity from immersion. This means in unstable times, information consumption becomes a biological input. It is not neutral. What can you do? Tool number 1, scheduled news windows. 1 or 2 fixed time slots per day, no constant background noise. This prevents anticipatory alertness. Another tool, no news in the bedroom. Simple but very effective. Sleep is a parasympathetic state. Threat signals before sleep reduce deep sleep regeneration. The next principle, metabolic stability. Stress and glucose work bidirectionally, meaning cortisol raises blood sugar and blood sugar fluctuations increase the stress response. It creates a loop. What can you do specifically? Protein in the morning, for example. A first meal high in protein and fat is the key. You'll have lower glucose spikes and more stable cortisol rhythms. Or another example, movement after eating. Walk for 10 to 15 minutes. It improves glucose uptake and reduces metabolic volatility. Another example, typical for entrepreneurs, no stress, stacking fasting, and caffeine. Many high performers combine these. I see it in high performers, and I've experienced it myself. Fasting, coffee, crisis situation. It feels efficient, but unfortunately it isn't. Metabolic stress plus psychological stress simply amplify each other. And today, I start with protein because I know stable blood sugar equals a more stable stress response. Not particularly spectacular, but sustainable. Fasting, caffeine, and crisis situations increase the cortisol load. Metabolic stress plus psychological stress reinforce each other. So resilience isn't a personality trait, it's autonomic adaptability. That's a big difference. And it's not about being strong, it's about regenerating faster. Longevity doesn't mean avoiding stress, it means recovering from it. I can't control geopolitics, and ultimately, neither can you. But we can protect our biological stability and regulate our system. For me, longevity means inner sovereignty, and stability is built daily. At the beginning, I asked, what does true longevity mean? Maybe the answer today is, true longevity isn't control, but inner sovereignty. Thank you for being here, and congratulate yourself for taking responsibility for your system. I can't control geopolitics, and ultimately neither can you. But we can protect our biological stability and regulate our system,